3, 2.
Good afternoon, Littleton. We have a very short meeting this afternoon, September 12th. A vote on a human resources issue. And were we going to have anybody speak to that today?
I mean, I can speak a
move
little
forward
bit.
Based on Monday's discussion.
Yeah. I had some discussion on the 10-year requirement, but I see there was some pushback on it. So
I did not have any pushback on it. I was okay with it.
I mean, I didn't get to explain my logic, I guess. I read everybody else's logic on it. The only thing I would say about a 10-year, Jim, I acknowledge the potential that it could hinder recruitment, but I didn't see it that way because I don't think it's an entitlement that people should expect. Giving someone a stipend after step 10 is really like an incentive, like, wow, they've been in municipal government, for 10 years, or that we wanted to recognize it. So I was just thinking recruiting someone, we're recruiting them for a grade and a step from 1 to 10 in there. And
right.
That should be it. This was more, to me, I was looking at it a little differently, but I recognize, I mean, you gave a pretty good opinion, and I know Michelle has an opinion on it as well. And I'm willing to concede on it, but I did have a logic behind it. And Chuck and I had talked offline, just more so about the internal piece to it, the internal fairness to employees that have been here a while. And when we bring an employee in at a higher step, we're expecting them to have a lot of as much municipal experience as possible to be to meet the conditions of this, if you will, stipend. So I didn't
warrant it.
Yeah, but we can talk more about it. And Karen, I'm sorry, I should have actually asked to speak through you, the chair.
You may speak.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can. Oh, I'm sorry, Chuck. Madam Chair, if I can it was what I had expressed to Mr. Wilson this morning was in disagreement in recommending the 10-year minimum for municipal service. Is we have found an outstanding candidate, and we hired Eric Durba that has worked primarily in the private sector, and he is bringing a great sense of responsibility and experience and expertise in his field to benefit the town, specifically with our facilities. He's done an excellent job, and I know Ryan has worked closely with him on 36 King Street on a number of different issues that have come up in the different buildings. He's instrumental in the construction of the Council on Aging, the senior center, and typically, not okay. That may not be, but typically, especially in a building area, in the building department, inspectional services, what you often find that coming into a municipality is a contractor, general contractor, that is no longer on the ladder banging nails. After 25, 35 years of doing it, they then putting themselves in a position of using their expertise and the success in the private sector and applying it to a municipality and working directly with contractors based upon his or her experience in the field for 25 to 30 years. If we impose that minimum of 10 years there, we are already having a difficult time of identifying seasoned experts in that field. Many municipalities are, and here this this would make it even more difficult if someone had to have at least 10 years of municipal experience.
Karen, may I?
Sure.
This is Chuck. Again, this is Chuck. Jim, I respect that. And I think that even if it were in place or if it was a 5-year, we've got a history of waiving whatever policy we've had when it's come to hiring. And we've had to make a decision on a case by case basis. And that could be true of, in this instance, certainly it took us a while to find a facilities manager. The other component, so if there's no appetite for it, there's no appetite for it. But what if we lowered that to 5 years municipal experience, but with the opportunity to waive it if necessary? The thing that I was more hung up on was vesting somebody, that they're going to be with the town for some period of time before they can qualify for that. So if they committed a 10 and they're new employee to the town, they need to be here for 3 years or something. Just I feel more strongly about having them vested. It might be 2 years. I don't know. Maybe it's a year. I wouldn't go down to a year, but that's where I had more concerns than with having municipal experience.
If I could, through the chair, if we're going to go into a little bit more of that part of it, Chuck, I would say after a year, you don't qualify for it the year that you're hired. In other words, if you get brought on in January and you just happen to come in at step 10, you wouldn't qualify it till the following year. I don't think you should qualify for it the year that you're hired. It's almost like a year of probation. But I think that's the only way we could kind of trigger it in there. But I'd like the idea of a 5-year. I like the idea of some time period in there. It's not, Jim, you do bring up a good point of there are some professions out there within the town that line up really well with the public sector, and some of the best talent we would grab out of the public sector and not necessarily
Private.
Oh,
Private
excuse me,
sector.
the private sector, not necessarily the public sector. So, I'd like to hear, Matthew or Karen, chime in on it. I can see both ways. I do know that once we say something here, it's going to be hard to change it. It'll be hard, in other words, to all of a sudden throw a 10-year on this if this thing goes south, or doesn't seem to be working as planned, or but I'd like to hear everybody else's thoughts on it.
I can go next. I guess I'm wondering how much of an issue this is going to be. I'm wondering how much whether we're worried about something that isn't
Yeah.
a lot of upheaval. How many employees that are current are going to be affected, and how often do we hire someone with, multiple, 5 or more years of municipal experience? If the latter is the most common case, then, let's I don't know, negotiate the stipend as part of the employment. But I just don't know.
If I may, through the chair, I can speak to that. And then I know, Matthew, that I had said a couple things earlier. I use the example of our facilities manager that just was recently hired, and he was strictly private sector. And he's done a great job for us, and he has been a great find. And I'm sure Ryan can speak in great detail to the benefits he brings to Littleton based upon working closely with Ryan on a number of different issues within our facilities. And also typically the profession, such as a building commissioner or a building inspector, typically you really don't have people that have started their careers and as a building inspector early on in the career. You will predominantly get an individual, whoever he or she is, that has been on a ladder and banging nails for 25 years, and they want to get off the ladder, and for health reasons or whatever. And so then now they look for, they still like the business, they still like that's still in their blood, if you want to say, and they want to stay part of it, and they've got the necessary licenses to have a job and continue to stay in the field in their profession. And they will go to a municipality and become an inspector. And in some cases, initial inspectors don't have municipal experience. They'll come right off the street, but they've got all the licenses appropriate that they can be trained appropriately for inspectional services. That's a huge position to fill, and it's getting more and more difficult as we talk to peers in other communities. It's much more difficult to fill that type of a position, especially.
So no comments on the vesting?
I guess talk to me about the year that they're hired. Is that the case with our current potential hire? I won't say the position. Or is this a situation where the employee wouldn't matter anyway, because it wouldn't be till July of 2026? In other words, if we say you don't qualify unless you have a year of service in the town,
A full year.
a full year of service within the town, does that hinder this? It's just we treat that first year as a probationary almost. So I guess the performance. Since we tie performance to this, maybe that fixes that problem as well. I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, performance is a fix to it. And I can't imagine, I really, at least, and Ryan, please chime in on if whether you agree, but I don't see us hiring someone and saying step 10.
Right.
There would have to be, I think the max we would, look at going is potentially a 9, which would give them essentially, they would have to be here for a better part of a year, and then performance review that would make them eligible to go, up to now. Then they're hitting the ceiling after that for another year.
We have hired people at step 10, but to Jim's point, it's still going to take a year for them to work their way through, and we're not going to award this unless they have a satisfactory review thereafter. So it is based on the merit for that. So I see Michelle's on it too. Michelle, you have anything you
Actually,
want to add?
Ryan, before we go there, I'd like to speak.
Yeah.
Sure.
We've put this type of stipulation in anytime we've had to waive the current policy in order to bring somebody on above 2 steps above the posting, where we have put that in place. We've done it also with I think both the deputies, when they got a bump, they weren't able to step. It wasn't the same thing, because this is a stipend, but I see it as the same thing, because it basically is taking the place of a step. So anytime we've done something where we bump somebody up, we've kind of put the language in that they wouldn't step in this cycle. So I feel pretty strongly that we should at least do a year. Like, they're on board for a year, and they wouldn't, to Gary's point, 2026 would be the first time, if we hired somebody today, 2026 would be the first cycle that they would be eligible to get the step stipend.
Yeah, that's fine. We could put that in.
I mean, if we're not hiring, because even if you hired at a step 9, like Jim just said, you wouldn't qualify for this year anyway. You're gonna get a step anyway to step 10, right? It only affects those people that come in at step 10.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
That they need to wait. They need to wait a year. So they're gonna go anywhere from 1 month to 24 months. or 12?
If it's a year, may I request, if it's a year, then we do have language in there that allows me to request the select board to waive it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think you have that authority anyway, but yeah, if you want to put it into the policy that exceptions can be granted based on exceptional performance, why don't we say that within the first year? I mean, or at the discretion of the town administrator, at the recommendation of the town administrator.
Great, thank you. Sure.
I mean, that's my opinion anyway.
I agree with that.
Vote, the select board.
Thank you.
So excuse me, how would that read then?
So,
Section 2.
Employees that brought in on at the highest step 10, would not be eligible for the stipend until 12 months served. They wouldn't be eligible till the following cycle. I don't know how you word that in the following fiscal year.
You can't put it that way, Gary, because then if they come in January and they're there for 12 months, so they're going to ask for the stipend in February.
Right. So it's the following fiscal year cycle is what it is.
Yeah.
With the ability exceptions to be considered through the town administrator and the select board. I mean, that's really
Just say the stipend, they're eligible for the stipend at the first fiscal year following 12 months of employment.
There you go. God, Matthew, why don't you write more?
I need to, I guess, because I haven't gone to law school.
okay, I think we have that. Okay.
I guess I'm gonna push back a little bit. I don't think the ad hoc approach is serving us all that well. I think I would rather that we had a policy and stuck to it. And in my opinion, the policy should be more flexible, not less. I just, as we grow, this idea that we're going to keep granting exceptions and that's how we want to do business is not something that I'm really in line with.
I agree.
Okay. So Karen, you're just saying let's keep it the language as written. And
No. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's what Karen's saying because we add.
I'm saying I didn't think the 10-year requirement was a great idea.
Okay.
I think it's I think again it pushes back on that flexibility that we need in today's
Okay.
hiring environment.
That's fair. Yep.
So to me, I think it should either be, you're eligible after that 1 year mark, the way Matthew put it, or you're not.
Okay.
So eliminate the waiver or the exception,
I mean,
or at least don't
just-
put language in there.
What?
yeah. What's your, I would value the town administrator and the assistant town administrator's opinion on that.
Karen, the only thing I would see is if we're going to put that language in there, if someone gets hired on July 2nd,
Mhm.
they would not be eligible the following July in this scenario if we don't put language in there because they would not have served a year before the next fiscal year. So that would be
Yeah.
where you'd want to create an exception can be granted based on that, how we put that language in there. We could do
At the
the
How
At the
about just based
discretion
on
of
the
the
town
TA?
administrator's, at the top, based on the town administrator's recommendation
Okay.
or discretion, either one.
Okay.
And that way we're not tying our hands to performance or,
Okay.
you know.
I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you.
All right. This is actually a fantastic incentive to the employees. I think there's going to be a lot of happy people in town that have been don't want to go anywhere, but they've been here a while. Forget the recruitment side. I think the retention side, this is a huge victory, I think, for a lot of employees that are creeping up on this and that have been there a while.
That's great.
Yeah. Well done, Gary.
So,
Crafting this. Michelle.
everybody here, Michelle's.
Yeah. And Ryan. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Let's have a motion.
Go back to the motion. Hold on a minute. Bear with me. So this would be moved as amended.
Move that the select board vote to approve the proposed amendment as amended under section 2, classification and compensation B, compensation 3, step increases in the town of Littleton employee handbook.
Second. By Gary, seconds that.
Okay, let's go to vote. Chuck,
Chuck says yes.
Gary,
Gary says yes.
Matthew,
Matthew says yes.
and me, Karen Morrison, says yes as well. Unanimous. I'll accept a
you all
motion to
very, very
adjourn.
much. Thank you all very, very much.
So moved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Chuck says
Move to adjourn by Matthew, second by Gary.
Gary seconds the motion to adjourn.
All right. Chuck,
Chuck says yes.
Gary,
Gary says yes.
Matthew,
Matthew says yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Appreciate
Have a-
everyone's
Thank you.
time today.
Have a great
Thank you
weekend.
very much.